Good afternoon, everyone. We'll come to order, and this is the House of Commons Standing Committee on Indigenous and Northern Affairs, and we're continuing our study of suicide among Indigenous peoples and communities. Welcome, everyone. We're meeting today on Algonquin territory, for which we're very grateful, and we have two panels today. The first panel in the first hour, 3:30 to 4:30, is the Mental Health Commission of Canada and the Canadian Association of Suicide Prevention, and I think we've arranged that you would each organization will have 10 minutes to present. We thank you very much for that. Getting right into it, I'd like to invite Louise Bradley, President and CEO, and Ed Mantler, VP Programs and Priorities of the Mental Health Commission of Canada, to take the floor for 10 minutes. I'll just let you know when we get to about 9 minutes, I'm going to show you a yellow card, and at 10 minutes, I'll show you a red card, and we'll try to wind up there. Okay, thank you very much.
Hopefully you won't need either. So
okay.
Thank you very much for inviting us here today. It's really a privilege to appear before this committee. I think that it's doubly important to acknowledge the Algonquin people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. And I'd also like to pay respect to their elders past and present, and recognize strength, resilience, and the capacity of Indigenous peoples in this land. I think this is particularly important today, given the recent tragedy in northern Saskatchewan, and I'd like to acknowledge that today. I want to begin first by stating very clearly that I am not an expert in this area. I am not an Indigenous person. You've heard from Drs. Rod McCormick and Mike DeGagne and other Indigenous thought leaders, and they've talked to you about restoring families and providing healing, and you've heard that the answers lie in communities, something that the Mental Health Commission very much agrees with. I can attest to this, having learned a great deal, having visited the Esquimalt First Nation in June. I had the privilege of meeting Chief Charlene Below, who has initiated healing within her community, and very, very impressive. I have with me today a commitment stick that I was honored to be presented with, and was part of my reconciliation journey, and having spent time with her, and also listening to the stories of elders within her community. I think that the sweeping transformation that has taken place under her leadership is an inspiring example of reconciliation. And as I said, I learned a tremendous amount. The community was very generous and gracious in welcoming us, and it isn't an exaggeration to say that my experience was nothing short of life-changing. I spent a couple of days there, and it really was very enlightening. I took away from that visit 3 key understandings that have really reshaped my worldview, both personally and as a leader of a national organization. Firstly, my commitment to reconciliation has been strengthened, and like all Canadians, I bear a responsibility to play a role in the healing of our country. As the leader of the Mental Health Commission of Canada, I'm learning what it means to be a partner in this unique context. I've come to understand that being invited to a table is a privilege, and the best thing we can bring to the conversation is an open mind and a willing spirit. We've set aside our past attempts in favor of a nuanced understanding born very much from humility. Secondly, I recognize that the work that lies ahead must be undertaken by Indigenous peoples, and they have the capacity, regionally and nationally, to lead this effort. Research tells us that intergenerational trauma and its effects are the legacy of residential schools and the relocation of Inuit in our northern communities. and it means generations affected by poor health outcomes. I often liken the stigma associated with mental illness as an iceberg. Being from Newfoundland, I'm quite familiar with those. And what we see is really only the very tip of the problem. I think it might be fair to say that the same is true when it comes to assessing the damage incurred to Indigenous peoples through decades of colonialism and cultural subordination. There are ways and means to support Indigenous peoples as they action their own solutions to the crisis they now face. Layers and layers of research and evidence support this work. And as an external entity, the Commission, for example, waits to be invited to align and partner with Indigenous organizations. As we were privileged to do with the ITK this past summer around the Inuit suicide prevention strategy in the launch of that strategy in Northern Labrador. Our knowledge as an organization was enriched by this experience, and we understand that it takes years to build a foundation of trust, and that this foundation will likely remain delicate for quite some time to come. Finally, I recognize that chronic underfunding has ill-served Indigenous peoples and harmed Canada's overall health and reputation. That's why the federal government should support sustained, long-term funding of non-political Indigenous organizations such as the former Aboriginal Healing Foundation. Organizations that deliver evidence-based, strength-based, community development, and culturally based initiatives. I specify non-political because any efforts must be undertaken with a view to a long-term solution. Critical health outcomes cannot be dictated by the political will at the time. To echo my colleagues, Drs. McCormick and Degagne, direct service provision should never be politicized. To conclude, I would like you to consider some of the small successes of which the Commission is very proud. We are working on implementing the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call for action. One step we're taking this very week, as a matter of fact, is implementing reconciliation dialogue workshops that is now mandatory for every staff within the Commission, and our Board of Directors is also undergoing that training. As part of our commitment in our role as a convener, we have invited Healthcare Can and the Canadian Centre on Substance Abuse to join us in that journey. Finally, I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to personally thank Senator Murray Sinclair, Chief Charlene Belleau, Nathan Obed, President of ITK, and Joe Gallagher, CEO, First Nations Health Authority, all of whom have become trusted advisors to me and everybody at the Commission on this journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Mr. Mantler, are you adding anything at this time? Okay.
Not at this
Well,
time.
thank you. We'll move to the right along to the Canadian Association of Suicide for Suicide Prevention, and we'll hear from. It looks like Jennifer Ward. Your light is on, who is the director and survivors chair, and we, along with Ed Connors, the director. So 10 minutes to divide as you see fit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me here today. In April, May, and June of this past spring, I was humbled to be a part of Ontario's Emergency Medical Assistance Team, also known as EMAT. The EMAT team deployed to Attawapiskat, Ontario, in the wake of its youth suicide crisis. It was the only time in history that the team had been deployed to a First Nations community, and the deployment of almost 60 days was the longest in the team's history. As a psychosocial member of the EMAT team, I provided risk assessments, safety planning, clinical supports, psychoeducation, and resources to the existing community staff and community members. I'll speak today about some of the experiences and knowledge that are informed by what I refer to as the survivor's lens. As a survivor of suicide loss myself and the Survivors Chair for the Canadian Association of Suicide Prevention, my focus is always on postvention. At CASP, we use the term suicide prevention. We inherently mean suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. We've made significant strides in raising awareness and public dialogue about suicide prevention and education, but clearly much work lies ahead. In Attawapiskat, I learned a great many things. Namely, I learned that although the media at times may have suggested otherwise, that community and its people have a great many strengths. Strengths which, in the context of suicide prevention, deserve our focus and deserve to be celebrated. On many occasions in Attawapiskat, I was aware that I was not the best person to be providing support to that community. Although I am an ally and I embrace First Nations learnings, I am not from them. I am an outsider. There were many occasions when working with an individual or family, we would make every effort to bring in a local resource or a person to provide additional supports and continuity, knowing that our team would be leaving. It was more often the case than not that we learned that the resource person was profoundly impacted themselves. And so I'm reminded that we must not forget that the caregivers are also hurting. From the literature, we know that each suicide death leaves in its wake a number of survivors who are deeply impacted following a suicide death. Traditionally, we've reported that number to be between 7 and 10 survivors for each suicide loss. New research tells us that it's much more likely to be 25 people per suicide death that are profoundly impacted. In smaller and remote communities, when a suicide occurs, virtually everyone is impacted, including the first responders and the emergency personnel. We also know that suicide-related grief and loss is a significant risk factor in suicidality for those survivors that are bereaved by a suicide loss. However, clinically or on the front line, we often fail to recognize or address the suicide-related grief, which may have been the very experience that brought somebody to thoughts of suicide or suicidality in the first place. So we must not forget the healing that must occur after a suicide has happened. Postvention is prevention. During my time in Attawapiskat, I was lucky enough to have been included in several experiences which promoted not only healing, but life promotion and celebration of culture. Arts-based workshops, including painting, drum making, and a gathering of youth in a music recording session. The youth of Attawapiskat are truly amazing. Although these types of gatherings are not traditionally viewed as suicide prevention interventions, we have to make room for this to be so. In Attawapiskat and all of Canada, the focus is on youth, and there was also much involvement and concern for the elders and older adults in that community. But what about that generation in between? Those that are mothers and fathers, and also daughters and sons. We know that the middle-aged demographic is among the highest risk demographic across Canada, although not specifically for First Nations communities. But we do know that all individuals and entire communities must be engaged in reconciliation and holistic life promotion practices. This critical age group are most often caregivers for aging parents and for children and youth. So how then are we reaching and engaging them in life promotion? This is an important question that begs our attention. Since 1985, the Canadian Association for Suicide Prevention has attended to the critical public health issue of suicide across our nation. As an unfunded volunteer organization, we rely on the strength of our partnerships with national partners such as the Mental Health Commission of Canada and the First Peoples Wellness Council. In addition, we also work closely with many community-based organizations, and many successes in the field of suicide prevention are both community-driven and innovative. I have some more to say about that, but I think I'm going to leave some space for my colleague.
Thank you. So I am Dr. Ed Connors. I'm a Mohawk Irish ancestry, band member of Kahnawake Mohawk Territory. As a psychologist, I have worked in our communities, First Nations communities, for the past 35 years across the country. In those 35 years, I have been involved intimately with the experiences of suicide in our communities. And what I'm going to share with you now is just a synopsis of what I've shared with you in a form of a document that you'll find in your package. I apologize to the French members of this committee that I did not have time because we were only notified just recently of the invitation, so I did not have the time to fully have this translated for you, but we will ensure that it will come to you in full translation as required. So I'm going to make a few comments here with regards to what is in this paper. So I'm going to begin by actually starting with the acknowledgement. Thank you, Louise, for acknowledging the First Nations Indigenous peoples of this territory and their lands. And I will also acknowledge that these are in our territories as well, and in more what we call modern time. But I'm going to begin by giving just a comment about, as an opening, that we do when we open any gathering and when we come together. And it's the opening of the Thanksgiving prayer. And then when we begin, we begin in this way, and I think it's significant as an opening to my remarks. What we say when we open in the Thanksgiving prayer is that we are now gathered. And we see as we gather the cycles of life that continue. And as we see those cycles of life as they continue, we recognize that we've been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other in all of life. And as we do this, we bring our minds together as one, and we give greetings and thanks to each other. And now, as we've done so, we acknowledge that our minds are as one. The Indigenous populations worldwide, and I'm going to make comments regarding not just our Indigenous populations of Canada, because my involvement has been worldwide, globally. I've acknowledged and recognized the similarities and the patterns of suicide globally. Indigenous populations worldwide are at the highest risk of suicide. While Indigenous communities worldwide generally present the highest rates of suicide, there are many examples of Indigenous populations, such as the Sami people of Norway, and communities in Canada, such as BC First Nations, Select First Nations, that have been reported by Chandler and Lalonde as having very extremely low suicide rates, and in many cases, no suicide. In Canada, high suicide rates range from 5 to 7 times that of suicides amongst non-Indigenous populations. In extreme cases, suicide rates have exceeded over 800 times that of non-Indigenous communities. Suicides in Indigenous communities globally are overwhelmingly overrepresented amongst our youth. And I draw that to your attention because I think it's an important question and a focus that we need to have about why is it that our youth have such high suicide rates, not just in Canada, but Indigenous populations globally. So there is no to low suicide rates in many of our communities, and that's been accounted for in many of the studies that have been done, and some of the most recent work show that in those communities we can account largely for the low suicide rates to no suicide rates as being connected to strong self-governance and strong cultural renewal. Elevated rates of suicide in Indigenous communities have also been linked globally to colonization, colonialism, and acculturation. The removal of Indigenous worldviews as expressed through languages, cultures, beliefs, values, and lifestyles have been disrespected, suppressed, and oppressed through the process of colonization. I share with you at this moment a wampum belt that is the way that we made treaties in the past, and we made treaties with my ancestors. So as I pointed out to you, I am both of Indigenous ancestry, Mohawk, and Irish ancestry. And my ancestors came together in the formation of this treaty. This treaty was made in 1613 with the Dutch and the Haudenosaunee, or the Mohawk people. When this treaty was made, it was made to identify the fact that we were of two different worldviews, two different cultures, two different languages, and different ways of understanding ourselves, the world around us, and all of creation. And it recognized that if we were to be able to live together, and what it did say was, we will live together. We'll live together in peace and harmony on this land. But to do so, we need to be able to respect each other's cultures, each other's ways of knowing, understanding, and believing. And that we need not only to respect each other's ways, but to recognize that they are equal, that they are not one greater than the other. I believe today we are faced at this time, because there's many things that tell us today that we're at a time in our history where we can actually come back full circle to this treaty. And we can fulfill the vision of our ancestors, of my ancestors and yours. We talk about today as a time of reconciliation. What is reconciliation? Reconciliation, in many ways, has to do with reestablishing this vision, reestablishing the true relationship of equality and respect. In our communities today, Indigenous worldviews that have been repressed are now being expressed again and being renewed. And as they are being renewed in our communities, and I've seen this happen in many of our communities, as is now being shown within the research, as that renewal occurs, the rates of self-harm and the process of healing is taking shape. The renewal of Indigenous worldviews and associated lifestyles serve to protect against the negative effects stemming from the trauma and losses associated with colonialism. Cultural renewal enables our youth to answer 4 questions known to be important for healthy development, especially during the period of childhood to early adulthood. And these are: where do I come from? Who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? This knowledge also relates to recent insights provided through the First Nations Mental Wellness Continuum framework that identifies meaning, purpose, belonging, and hope as core concepts underlying the state of wellness or health within our people. First Nations communities have known that cultural renewal is primary to the recovery of healthy Indigenous peoples, families, and communities. This has been the core of our effective healing programs for many years. 27 years ago, I was part of the development of the Sacred Circle, providing a way of life within the Ojibwe Tribal Family Services in Treaty 3, Northwestern Ontario. This was one of the earliest examples of cultural renewal within our communities as a process of healing, and it was the first time that we really spoke to the experiences of life promotion as opposed to suicide prevention. It was the first time that we supported cultural renewal and healthy community development was discontinued at, and this is an important point, and I'll close on this note. That work that was done, and many of the pieces of work that we've done in the past that we've proven to be effective, was discontinued across the nation because programs that were focusing on this at one point in time, which were once federally funded, were moved from federal funding to provincial funding, and when that happened, there was a change from what we called family support programs and cultural renewal to a process of child prevention, or the child protection and child welfare agencies. And when that happened, we moved from the process of cultural renewal and the healing of our communities to where we are today. So I challenge you in your thinking about this to consider that we know what works, we have seen what works, and we have had many examples of that. We know this within our communities, and I hope that we are able to gain the support of your committee as we continue to come together in the process of reconciliation, process of healing within our communities. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank both organizations and all panel members for the testimony. We'll move right into questions now. And the questions, the first round of questions are 7 minutes in duration, and I'll use the cards again. And that 7 minutes will allow both question and answer. So the first question is coming from Michael McLeod, please.
Thank you, and thank you to all of you for your presentation. I'm the Member of Parliament for Northwest Territories, and since this committee was formed, or since the study was undertaken, we've experienced a lot of quite a few suicides. In the last 5 months, we've had 4. And when you start adding the people that are passing from drug overdose, because drugs have hit the north too and are in the small communities. We're really seeing the impact on our communities. And I find it really interesting when you say 25 people per suicide death are impacted, and maybe that number is even a little bit low, because I know in our communities they're all pretty much connected, people are related, and when somebody passes away, it's significant, and it takes a long time of recovery. Some people never recover. And we've had a chance to study this issue for a while now. We've gone to several communities and seen a lot of the facts that you've raised here today. We've heard, I think, in most places. And I represent 33 communities. And in some of our smaller communities, especially the ones that are made up of large Aboriginal populations, or predominantly all Aboriginal, we have real issues with trusting and using the health centers or the RCMP. And we have limited capacity. And we have very few programs that address some of the issues that need to be dealt with as a result of the residential school or trauma or how they've been impacted. And we virtually have no infrastructure or to house programs or offices. We heard in some of our testimony that mostly by the youth, that there should be a recommendation that investment be made in community-based youth facilities to be used for recreation, for reconciliation, for healing, for hunting, sports. And we do have some friendship centers, cultural centers, but I haven't heard anybody speak to actual infrastructure. So I'd like to ask that question. And also we've heard lots about the issue of housing and how that's impacting people in the communities and causing a feeling of despair because there's no place to stay, there's no place for people that are homeless, and it's a growing issue. Maybe I could ask both organizations to touch on those two areas.
I'll start off with some general remarks. I think you're absolutely right when you look at the issue of housing, which is a huge social determinant of health. The Mental Health Commission of Canada did a 5-year research demonstration project on homelessness and the mentally ill, but it did not do that in any northern communities. However, I think that the learnings from that research can apply, and what we had studied was a housing first approach, which means housing along with a basket of services. It doesn't mean housing only, it means housing first. And certainly it can have a huge impact in terms of the mental health outcomes of people in general. That's what our research had told us. You know, I'm not sure that, I don't think I'm any expert in terms of speaking about the infrastructure part of it. I do know that the work with the Aboriginal Healing Foundation certainly had community programs, if you want to refer that as infrastructure, that were very successful, is my understanding. But with that funding removed and the supports, it was taken away and reverted back with the numbers increasing. Did you want to add anything?
Thank you.
So I don't know if my colleagues.
Well, certainly, I mean, and I can only speak to my experience in Attawapiskat, but infrastructure was an absolutely glaring issue in my time there. My full-time job is on a police-based crisis team in Peel Region in Ontario, and so I have a natural inclination to find the officers in whatever community I'm in. So I spent a lot of time with the police in Attawapiskat as well, and I said to them, "What's one simple thing that we could do to make it easier for you to do your job and serve this community?" And they gave a simple example which had never even occurred to me. So they don't have street names or addresses or numbers on any of the homes. So they get a report that there's a suicide in progress, or somebody's at risk of suicide, and they're trying to respond and they cannot locate the house. Right, so that's a very simple infrastructure issue that had real and profound consequences in the daily duties that the officers were trying to do. So that's certainly one point that I can make. The other is, again, around the youth, right? Not having a youth center, not having a dedicated space where they could gather, and then some of the spaces that did exist in the community were unsafe. Condemned, really. So the arcade in particular being one building that was just not available, and then some of the buildings that did exist, it was difficult or challenging for the youth to have access to them on a regular basis, or to find adult volunteers that were able to regularly contribute to safe practices and safe gatherings for them.
We're just 30 seconds remaining, Michael, if you can make use of it.
Yeah, well, I think you're correct. You're identifying what are the basic needs, right? And we know already that in the north, for example, in many of our communities now, that the infrastructure of our housing is collapsing, right? As we have global warming and the changes are occurring, we're basically losing housing. And so when we start to think about health, right, we have to start at the basic needs. That's what you're pointing to, I think. A lot of these other things that we're recognizing are needs that are and they're factors that add into the complex picture of creating a healthier life. But we have to start, I think, at the beginning, which is the basic needs. Housing is only one of those. When we talk about the social determinants of health, what about the food issues?
Dr. Connors, I'm sorry, we'll have to leave it there and move on, but I'm sure you'll have an opportunity to get the remainder out. The next question is from Kathy McLeod, please.
Thank you, and thank you to the witnesses. And, I think everyone on this committee, with the recent very tragic suicides in Saskatchewan, are feeling a very heavy burden in terms of where we're going to go with this particular initiative and how we're going to actually make this matter. And I think, it was just all the more powerfully brought home in the last week. So I guess, I can understand, Dr. Connors, the sort of that picture that you talked about. I'm going to start by focusing, Jennifer, I've always sort of wondered how effective these deployment teams are as a response. And of course, we have another crisis. And so tell me a little bit more about who was on your deployment team, what you did, how you did it, and do you think it made a difference? I guess those are...
So the EMAT team consists largely of critical care paramedics, nurses, nurse practitioners, and the psychosocial team is primarily graduate level social workers, which is my profession. We did also have a number of individuals on our team that were First Nations identified or Aboriginal social work practitioners, and we were lucky to have them, and I would say they were the most valuable members of our team because, of course, they were able to connect with community.
Group goes into the community that already doesn't have housing, and so keep going, but some of these technical details I'm wondering about.
Curious about. So we actually stayed in a hunting lodge, and we were, it took time certainly to develop rapport with community members, and we weren't certain initially if we would be welcomed. And initially it was a 30-day deployment, and that initial 30 days was exclusively hospital-based. So we were providing respite relief to the clinical staff in that community that were simply burnt out from responding to this crisis in the week prior to our arrival. And many of them actually left community to go and tend to their self-care elsewhere. So we were brought in for respite services originally. The second phase of our deployment was much more community-based, in which we participated in some of the practices that I mentioned around arts-based healing, drum making that we had done with some local elders. We have brought in people, music sound recording artists to work with the youth as well. And then we worked with many of the clinical care providers within the community around community crisis response models and some things that we know have worked elsewhere. And really it was a delivery of resources and ideas and saying these are some things that we know have worked. Some of them perhaps will work for you, and then we would learn as well from that group. Did it work? Is that your question? Was it effective over time? Certainly I would say there have been many good outcomes from that deployment. So one in particular Ed and I have had the privilege of being a part of was the Sounding Echo Youth Council in Attawapiskat had been overwhelmed with response that was media-led, right? So many organizations reached out to this youth council, and one in particular was the Jays Care Foundation from the Toronto Blue Jays. So the Jays Care Foundation is still involved in that community, and so many of the outreach efforts are long-term. And so they have now created, Ed and I have been involved a little bit in the creation of it, a 3-year program in cooperation with the Ontario Ministry of Child and Youth. And it's a program called Girls at Bat. And it's for the 8 nations around the James Bay coast. And it specifically targets young females in that community. And it is a life promotion program. So I do think that that will have a sort of longer term and positive impact.
Dr. Connors?
So just adding to that, I think what you're concerned about, which I've been concerned about, is the fact that many of our crisis responses are just that, they're just crisis only, and then we pull out. And the experience I've seen in our communities quite consistently is that, we continue to get the message that people care at the moment, but then once they leave, that we get the message that people don't care, because why did you come and then disappear? So what's happened now, and what is happening, as Jennifer was talking about, is that the difference is we're keying in on that now and saying that's not enough. We have to have consistent long-term responses. So when she went in and they started to identify, for example, children who were at high risk and needing more services, the question became not only what are we going to do while they're there, but how are we going to help these young people to get services beyond this? So this is one of the responses, but then there's other issues that need to be attended to in order to ensure that that consistency of care is followed through on. Because what's happening is that we actually have now identified through other programs that they connected with, and for example, the Nautic Healing Lodge and Learning Center, we did work with the kids from Attawapiskat. We began and worked with them for a month, and then after that month we went back to the community and we've begun a relationship working with the community. So we now have an ongoing, and the youth that were in that program now actually connect with our workers through the internet, and they've started to develop relationships. So in addition to the program that you're talking about there, we're starting to evolve other forms of relationships with the community to ensure that there's long-term response and not just, crisis response.
All good? Okay. Thank you. We're just about out of time. Thank you very much for that. The next question is from Charlie Angus, please.
Well, thank you very much for coming here. I have enormous respect for your work. Want to thank you for your work with the EMAT team. I don't know if we met at the emergency ward, but I went there a couple of times to see the work. I want to talk about suicide contagion and clusters, because when we had the Attawapiskat state of emergency and we had to fly in an emergency team, there were, across Canada that same month, there were states of emergency declared in Escanaga, Cross Lake, there were 3 in Saskatchewan. And imagine 3 non-native communities declaring a state of emergency because their kids were killing themselves. Government would turn themselves upside down. But what we get is an emergency response, and no offense to the great work that was done, but this crisis didn't just happen. None of these crises happen accidentally. They're clusters. I just want to walk you through. In 2008-09, we lost 13 kids in James Bay in a winter. and they were laying off the frontline staff. And the government was going to come in with a program to get kids to play, but they were cutting off the frontline workers. 2012, they cut them off. When Sheridan Hukumah died, her body, we couldn't get her home for 4 or 5 months. The contagion started then. So to be surprised that all these children were starting to self-harm, I find it shocking. And I want to ask you, because if we know that suicide is a contagion, if we know that we have to move in, if we know we have to have those supports, then why is it with the 10-year-old girl killing herself in Saskatchewan now, we're still scratching our heads at the federal level and saying, oh my God, what are we going to do? Maybe if we got a program, maybe if we got them to fill out a form to get some kind of youth thing happening, it'd be better off. It's a Band-Aid after Band-Aid. I'd like to hear from your experience on the ground in Attawapiskat what you see as a long-term solution so we don't have to fly in emergency teams anymore.
So I think that one of the most critical things that we're missing in Canada is a national response around postvention, right? So we know that suicide is going to occur, and we know that. So Sheridan Hukumah, many of the girls, or many of the individuals that I was able to meet when I was in Attawapiskat were profoundly affected by her death personally, and they had little to no formalized supports around that. And when I say formalized, I don't mean in my traditional clinical sense, but even on a community level. So there's many communities, Ottawa is one of them, that have a post-suicide support team, that as soon as a suicide occurs, those teams go in, they're local, they're on the ground, they're connected to resources. That is something that I think that we need in Canada. It exists in the United States, it exists in Ireland and Scotland and many other countries. So I think we need to understand that suicide, is a circle, right? And prevention is postvention, is intervention, and they all work together. So that's one way that I think that we could get in front of that, is to recognize the risk is going to go right through the roof as soon as that occurs.
I mean, so with Sheridan, we had the warning bells going off, but we couldn't get youth out to get treatment. I mean, we'd be told treatment in a lot of the areas, it just doesn't happen. I got an email from a young girl in the James Bay region who said, well, I'm so glad all the emergency teams are flying in. Can you drop one of them off in our community? So it's the issue. So I just want to, in the time I have left, is talk about the trauma of the frontline workers. You talked about the NAPS police. The work that EMAT did, just giving them a break, was enormous. These are frontline battle statistics in terms of what they were dealing with on a nightly basis, and they're dealing among their own family members. And then people leave, and our frontline workers are dealing with severe, severe trauma, not just with dealing with the children, but these are their own families. How do we ensure a national support so that the communities are not left on their own to deal with this trauma? Because NAPS officer said, we're the ones who go in and have to cut the children down. We're the ones who are expected to go out the next day and go to work, and we're the ones who end up killing ourselves as well. How do we deal with trauma for the frontline workers?
Well, we deal with trauma by actually, that's what Jen was talking about in terms of providing the services that are necessary to help them with grieving and with their bereavement, because that's the initial service that needs to be provided to them. I do a lot of that work with a lot of the police services that are serving our northern communities, and so that's happening, and we are trying to do that, but we don't have sufficient numbers of resources to respond to the need yet at this point. So part of it is actually a funding issue in terms of ensuring that we can provide those services to those people. But I think that there's another point, Charlie, that I think is really important to recognize here in terms of your question about, well, how do we change this system? Because you're right, these figures that I quoted here they've been the same for 35 years. The same conditions have continued to repeat themselves. What can we do differently, though, that and this is, I'm saying, we have learned over the time, but we haven't been utilizing a lot of what we've been learning. And that's particularly the knowledge, I think, that Louise was referring to in terms of saying that we do have the knowledge within our First Nations communities about what can work, right? But we haven't. I gave you an example of one that was working really well, but then it was gone, right? We had 12 communities that we were working with, a huge change occurring there. And we're addressing the true needs. And then all of a sudden the funding changes, priorities change, and all of a sudden all the resource and the services that are needed that you're looking for and you're asking about are gone, right? That was 25 years ago, over 25 years ago that I did that work. So we do learn, but sometimes we don't pay attention to what we have learned that works. And I say First Nations, we do, and people know that what has been working. The other point that I think is really important is a systemic point. And that has to do with the borders. In this country, we've created borders that are not First Nations borders, right? They're the provincial borders and the federal borders, and then, as you know, the politics of it all then becomes wrapped up in how children are treated or how they're not treated. So I've got an example of one of the young people from Attawapiskat that, we identified the need for that child's services as being immediate and very extremely high risk, and there were a lot of those children who were extremely high risk. She was the highest. And we identified where those services were that were culturally appropriate, but it was across the border. It was in Manitoba. So what happened? We couldn't access those services for her. And they ended up placing her into a Southern Ontario psychiatric facility for adults who had virtually no understanding of that child's cultural background, what the needs are, what's happening in the community, right? So how do we help when we think we're helping, but we're not, right? And as First Nations people, we do recognize that. We know that's happening. And we try to educate and share that but this is where we need to bring together, start sharing that knowledge and listening to each other and giving some credence to the knowledge that's there within our communities.
Thank you, Dr. Connors. The next question is from Mike Bosio, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, guests, for being here today and providing this valuable information. And I apologize to you up front because there's a number of questions I have, and I want to try to get through them. And if I cut you off, I'm really sorry that I do that, but I want to try and get through it. The percent of Indigenous members of the Mental Health Commission, can you tell me what percent are Indigenous members?
You mean on staff?
Yeah.
We actually have increased our numbers just recently. We're trying to get representation in each of our program areas. Currently, I believe we have about 4 Indigenous people on staff.
And what about board members?
We have 2 Indigenous board members.
Of how many?
The board is currently 14.
Okay. And the same thing with the you're on the Canadian Association of Suicide Prevention. How many Indigenous members are part of it?
No. We currently have 4.
Out of how many?
How many now?
15. We're a board of
15.
Sorry, out of how many?
15 on the board.
Okay. And is there an Indigenous crisis team?
Not that I'm aware of. So one of the challenges that we had was finding appropriate services for the community in Attawapiskat. I was able to connect with the Native Youth Crisis Line that operates out of BC, British Columbia, and they have a 1-800 toll-free line, and that was the resource that we were able to offer that was specific to Native youth crisis.
Sorry, right now you have no direct federal funding for your program. Are you aware of any federal funding program or provincial funding program that goes towards any of these mental health related programs?
Well, there are. I couldn't name them all off to you at this point, but there are programs that are you asking about specifically about Indigenous or First Nations?
Yes, sorry, no,
programs
specifically Indigenous, yes.
Yeah. So for mental health, the ones that I'm familiar with are ones that I consult with currently. So there's programs like the Anautic Healing Lodge and Learning Center, which is in our region of the Simcoe-Muskoka region. It's a fairly large organization that has funding both from the province as well as federally. So there are organizations like that exist throughout the country.
So we've had some organizations come and speak to us, but once again, the funding model is precarious at best. Here one day, gone the next.
Yeah.
1 year program, 5 year program. there's really no long-term stable funding that has been dedicated to this area. Would you agree with that?
Yes, because an example of that is I'm also board member for the First Peoples Wellness Circle, which used to be referred to as the Native Mental Health Association of Canada. And we did have some support from the federal funding at one point, and then it was taken away. So, and then I also consult with the Thunderbird Partnership Foundation, which used to be which is NADAP. Used to be NADAP, now referred to as the Thunderbird Partnership, and it receives federal funding.
Okay, I'm just trying. Sorry, is there any training of Indigenous? Are there any programs that provide training for Indigenous peoples? Or, and once again, is it just a very precariously funded type program? Are there any training institutions specifically to Indigenous mental health workers, social workers, nurses?
Yeah, so the Mental Health Commission of Canada has Indigenous versions of mental health first aid, so that would be the first that comes to mind. Living Works offers both Safe Talk and Assist, which is applied in suicide intervention skills training, and they're working on adaptations of that model as well. There's a suicide postvention program that's tailored and developed by First Nations communities that operates out of the Center for Suicide Prevention in Calgary, and it's called the River of Life. These trainings are available, but they're expensive and they require someone on the ground to implement them.
So most of the individuals or the witnesses we've had so far have all point to the fact that the issue around long-term stable funding for many of these programs, that it just doesn't exist. I see a head shaking, so I assume that you all agree with that. In the underfunding of those programs, there was another two very quick questions. I'm running out of time. The Nurses Association, the Canadian Indigenous Nurses Association, was in. They were the last witnesses that were here earlier this week, and they had pointed to the fact that we should be, from an education standpoint, starting at grade 3 and 4, to move Indigenous students in this direction towards social, mental health, nursing, medical areas. Would you also agree with that statement?
Absolutely, and all helping professions.
So that finally, when we talk about all the different issues around housing, health, cultural funding, mental health funding, policing, education, the list goes on and on and on as the priorities, some in different levels that are required in different Indigenous communities. And the lack of funding and direction, would you agree that the best people to determine where the priorities and where the funds need to go to are Indigenous peoples themselves, so therefore around self-governance? So not only do we need long-term stable funding, we need self-governance to enable them to provide those priorities. Would you all agree with that statement? Please say yes.
Yes,
absolutely, yes.
Yes.
Head nodding isn't recorded. I need it all recorded online because really, once again, it's overwhelming, right? In some communities, like out of Wapiskat, where do we start, right? Where do we? So it's always the outside looking in, saying this is where we need to start, right? It's time for them to be on the inside, looking out and saying this is where we need to go. And this is the level of funding we need to get us there.
I think that's the point I made when I gave you a summary of my paper, and you'll see more of that reflected in the paper.
Thank you so much for your help.
I'm afraid to say we're out of time for this panel. I want to say also thank you very much for your thoughtful and thorough testimony. I also want to let you know that the committee has created an online portal. If you feel there was more you'd like to add, there's a way to provide up to 3,000 words on this web portal. Further to that, there is also an online survey for mental health care providers that's meant to be. We're trying to push out very broadly. So Michelle will help you get connected with that, our committee clerk. And I would also ask that you could, if you would mind sharing that broadly within your support networks. We're trying to build a lot of really good data from that questionnaire. Okay. With that, I say thank you very much. And did you want to say?
I was just going to say that we do intend to submit a brief to the committee. So
Okay, good. Thank you very much. I'm very, very grateful for that. We'll take a short suspend. Committee members to take their seat, please. We've really got to keep on moving here. Thank you. Can I ask our Assembly of First Nation guests to come and take their seats, please? Okay, we're resuming now, and if I could invite the Assembly of First Nation witnesses to take their seats. Thank you very much. That's okay. We're all here together. So this session will go until 5:15. So we've got about 45 minutes. And representing AFN is Will Landon, National Youth Council representative. And I'm very pleased with you. I'm sorry, could you introduce the elder that is with you?
Yes, this is Annie St. George. She's Anishinaabe, a Gitche Anishinaabe Kwe from this area, an Algonquin elder, and she just joined us outside to smudge and make sure that we started off in a good way before we came in here, especially with the content matter that we're discussing.
Wonderful. Well, I'm very happy to turn the floor to you for 10 minutes to use as you would like.
Okay, I just wanted to just start off with my own thing. Bebe ka. Achina ganatuguk. Atso kanak. I ask the spirits to forgive me as I use English. Bangeeta Nishnabe Mwen. I only speak a little bit of my language, but I'm still learning. Gichimigwech, Jawanang, Wabanung, West, North. Manituaki, Manitou Nibe. Gizis, Tibiki Gizis. Gichimigwech, Gichi Manitou. Kije Manitou. For Bamatsiwin, Ni Bamatsiwin, my life. And I acknowledge all of you and thank you for giving the time to hear me today. How about you? Wabashikabo and Dijinikas, Ju and Dotem, Jushkanigam Dunjiba. My true identity is Standing White Bear. I come from Portage First Nation, just inside Treaty Number 3 territory, and I belong to the Lynx clan. Today I am here representing the AFN to discuss our calls to action and discuss the grim circumstances that are facing our communities. And before I even really get into it, I'm sure you guys are aware that a 10-year-old girl had taken her life just earlier this week. So as we're sitting here talking today, these issues are very real, and they're happening every single day, whether they be an attempt or a successful suicide. Our calls to action that I'll be presenting today reaffirm our treaty rights and their sacred relationship between the Crown and our people. Our calls to action also communicate our ideas for promoting life and reducing risk for suicide attempts amongst First Nation children and youth. As an Anishinaabe youth leader, it pains me, it absolutely crushes me to my core that there are children as young as 10 years old committing suicide. It pains me to know that there are young mothers and fathers taking their own lives and leaving children behind with questions as to why their mom and dad are no longer with them, why they chose to believe that way, much like my sister-in-law who left behind my niece and nephew. I myself attempted suicide in January 2016. These are things that are not happening to at-risk youth. They're not strictly related to them. These are people that are happening to people like me with strong cultural backgrounds, who grew up in a home with my family. There are deeper issues at work than the simple surface issues that we continue to look at, and that what we need to try to address. And the response from the previous governments have really left me frustrated, and even now, as the youth councils across this nation try to work as hard as they can to address this issue, because these suicides are nothing new. They've been affecting our nations for quite some time now, and these crises they happen in cycles. And with the lack of address from previous governments and more understanding as to how or why these things are happening, it's hard to, I guess it's easy to see why our relationship with the Crown is tense as it is now. But I will say that there is hope. Hope that we can come together and begin to start to realize that treaty relationship that our elders had envisioned many years ago. To not renew our partnership, but to get to that level of partnership where our people all across this nation, including Canadian people, are strong. And it's going to be our passion for young people, our care for those young lives, they're going to help us get there. Just give me a second, I gotta find my notes. The way forward requires First Nation social detriment of health to be addressed. Health outcomes cannot be assessed by the health institutions alone. First Nations people need to take a lead, and we are taking a lead in addressing these issues. But what we really need to start seeing is to be able for ourselves to control the resources and to have the freedom to develop the programs using our framework of wellness and our frameworks of healing. The way forward also requires a full implementation of the First Nations Mental Wellness Continuum framework. And again, the framework outlines opportunities to build on community strengths and control of resources in order to improve existing mental wellness programming for First Nations communities. There is clear pride, there's clear evidence that pride in one's identity can reduce suicide rates. As I sit here today, I've picked up a lot of my language, more than I ever did in my years of time. I'm starting to learn my ceremonies. I carry this with pride. And it's this that has begun my healing from January 2016 to the person that I am, and it's only October 2016. Strong, healthy, positive-minded. I never thought I'd ever be in this position in my entire life with my experiences, or to have these positive emotions back again. Yet here I am, and I credit it to this, most importantly. Because as we all know, colonialism, residential schools, a 60s coup, has left us disconnected from our lands, our identity, our culture. And when you look through our calls to action, you'll see that we ask for those specific resources and programming be allocated to supporting youth to reconnect with their culture, to find a way to reconnect with their language, their spirituality, and who they are, so that when they have that pride and that identity, that pride within themselves, they won't believe suicide is an option. They'll know where to go. They'll know that our lodges and our elders are our true mental wellness people, our healers, just like your psychologists and doctors. That is where we go, and that's where I went. And that's clear evidence that I'm doing much better. I just want to go through our calls to action with you, point by point, because it's just, I would do a disservice to the experiences of the youth who contributed to this if I just simplified it or bullet pointed it or anything like that. So please bear with me. Number one, a priority be placed on taking immediate action to address growing inequities in education, employment, income, and healthy living environments. In keeping with a social detriments perspective, First Peoples must control, design, and define their systems of health, education, child welfare, with funding that is at least equal to what all other Canadians receive. Number two, adequate and sustainable funding be provided to ensure that a comprehensive range of culturally safe prevention, health promotion, and mental health treatment services are made available to all First Nations communities. Three, regular and accessible training opportunities are made available to youth who want to learn how to be supportive peer mentors to other young people in their communities, such as Safe Talk or Assist training. Number four, adequate funding be provided to enable young people to attend regional gatherings related to life promotion and suicide prevention. Young people need spaces to come together, be heard, and develop their helping skills. 5, support be provided to First Nations communities so that elders and cultural advisors can provide cultural teachings that will enable young people to know where they come from, who they are, what their purpose is, and where they are going. This will help to reestablish the strengths of First Peoples' cultural identity that are vital for reconciliation. Number 6, culturally appropriate land-based teachings and educational programs are available for all First Nation children, youth, and young adults, including traditional language revitalization, opportunities, and since value ways of knowing come from speaking one's own language. All government departments work closely with Indigenous leaders and local, provincial, and territorial governments to implement recommendations 6 to 7 outlined in the TRC report. 6 to 17, I apologize. Specific efforts be made to reestablish relationships of equity and respect between First Peoples and the Crown. These forms of relationship are crucial in order to sustain and advance healthy communities. This is the foundation of reconciliation and health upon the land, Manitowoc, Mother Earth. Education for First Nation students be inclusive of the values and beliefs of First Nation communities as determined by First Nations communities themselves. In this regard, we envision a Canadian public education system that is inclusive and respectful of all Canadians' beliefs and values as cultural safety dictates. 10. All Canadian children learn about Canada's colonial roots and Indigenous pre-contact history to advance the restoration of peaceful and equitable relationships between First Peoples and the people of Canada. And 11. Give programs that are proving to be successful on communities, of which there are plenty, on our nations, increase and enhance flexible funding. And in closing, as we sit around this table, we must not only talk about our partnership on a nation-to-nation level, we must also begin acting on it. That sacred relationship must be reestablished for the sake and well-being and our health of our nation's young people. As you look at our calls to action, keep this in mind. 143 years ago, Treaty 3 was signed. Today, I'm an ancestor of those signatories, here today talking about a crisis on our youth, for our youth in our communities. For as long as I can remember, it's always been the young people that have faced the brunt of colonialism. When you look at residential school, 60s scoop, suicides. It's been our young people in our communities that have faced the most hurt and have had to deal with that. Just in keeping with that, my parents are survivors of residential school. I'm a father of a 6-year-old girl. They apologized to me for not being the best parents they could be. But how could I have ever accepted that apology when I knew it was not their fault? It was that system. So I say that, but with keeping this in your minds, that when we make decisions, when we come together as nations and leaders, we effectively make change for generations ahead. So I say, in 143 years from now, when it's our future sitting in these chairs, let's not make them come here to talk about another cycle of suicide. When they come to this table again, let's let them say that we came together, the Crown, our leaders, our youth, our elders, that we established a solid foundation of healing and well-being for the future generations, and that we did that together. So I leave that with you, because now that's up to you to come to us and determine, along with us, how that's going to look like in the immediate future and in the long term. I thank you, Gitchi Miigwech, for giving your energy and hearing these opening statements. Ho.
Mr. Landon, thank you very much.
Oh, that's okay.
We're going to go into questions now from the members of the committee. Each question has about 7 minutes, and when we get near the end of the 7 minutes, when we get to the 6th minute, I'll hold up the yellow card, and that just means we're about to move on. That's all that means. So the first question is coming from Gary Anandis-Angry, please.
Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. And thank you for presenting the calls to action by AFN. Certainly many of the suggestions, recommendations are not new. I think they've been around for a very long time. I think the real issue is how they're implemented and if they're implemented. I want to just probe on a couple of issues. You mentioned the prospect of healing, and many of the people that we met over the past several months have indicated that it's intergenerational. So it's not something that can happen in a generation or likely to happen in a generation. It'll take several generations. In your opinion, in your experience, what needs to be done to the individual, right? In the sense of the support system. I know you outlined a number of the government factors, but to the individual that can get us on the right path. I mean, I'm not saying the end goal per se, but the right path towards that process.
I believe it's going to start with the education system. Every Canadian, Indigenous or non, has to deal with the education system from 3 or 4 years old all the way until they're 18. So we have to start putting efforts into identifying at-risk youth to get them the help they need so that as they go through the school system, they have the right supports to become a healthy person. And that's going to be, including, whether it's in the public school system, including elders and opening the doors and relaxing legislation to let elders in there, or it's going to be within our own communities, our own school communities, to get them more funding to have those professionals come in and make sure that these youth who might not have the best supports at home, making sure that they're having a support and a safe place to go to. That's what I believe.
And the second part that you mentioned is about identity. It's about connection to the language, to the culture, to the people. And my understanding is, at least with respect to Anishinaabe, it's not a language that is spoken in the school system, or it's not available in the school system. And please correct me if I'm wrong on this. But what needs to be done in order for us to have at the primary school, starting at the primary school level, introduction of more languages so that the young people can learn and then progress as other, towards high school as well as post-secondary education.
Again, that's just going to be having to look at the colonial framework of which the public school systems are already set upon. That again, as I said before, legislation needs to be laxed to allow elders to be able to enter schools more easily to start teaching that language, because those are our true keepers. Anyone that, and they have a hard time going through university to get an education degree. I've been taught by people with education degrees in Ojibwe classes, and they were, I hate to say, but they were white people. So that makes no sense. They're not experts in it, and we're not getting anything out of it. So yeah, those are real language keepers, the experts in that language, need to be able to enter those areas and teach us.
So with respect to the school system itself, so right now many of the schools are run by local communities, right? So is it a matter of changing for example, in Ontario, changing the requirement for teaching to be, I guess, accredited as a teacher, but look at alternative ways of elders, for example, becoming or having the ability to teach within the school system?
Again, it could even just be as simple as elders working with teachers to develop a proper curriculum and being in the classroom along with the teacher to make sure that the standards are still maintained, but that we still have that framework in place. And again, too, it's just with First Nations communities in their schools, it's no secret. They're just extremely underfunded, understaffed. They don't have the resources. So those basic funding things need to be addressed in terms of our communities.
And just with respect to the to young people taking on increasing leadership roles within the communities, I know we've seen that in a number of different communities. A number of young people have come forward who have taken leadership roles. What do we need to do to empower that and to encourage more young people to come forward, like yourself, who can take on, because you indicated rightly that the people affected the most are the young people, and so what do we need to do to empower them to take on more leadership role and support them as they progress?
In all honesty, I just think it's just going to be establishing a respectful relationship with our leaders first and foremost. A lot of our young people have a cynical outlook on government and the relationship with our leaders. So once they start to see that there's a respect relationship between their leaders and that they know that there's these opportunities such as AFN Youth Council or even their PTO youth councils, and that they know that they will have the respect to be heard, and that's going to be demonstrated by our leaders and the leaders that sit around us here today, then they'll be more encouraged and more inclined to take up these roles and speak up on their own behalf.
And as a young leader, what's the biggest challenge you face right now in terms of getting your message across and getting access to government and advocacy and so on? What are some of the challenges you face?
Just being new to this whole thing, like I got elected to the Treaty 3 Youth Council by the youth just 6 months ago. And I just got elected to the AFN, or appointed to the AFN from the OpenYPC just in July. But from what I can see from there, it's going to be, I hate to keep going back to the resource thing, but that's just going to have to be how it is. We don't have the resources to travel everywhere or to always attend these things or even just to be able to hear our youth so that we bring that voice to you. Because again, as youth leaders, we're not specifically working from our own ideas and our own agendas. It's the young people behind us telling us what to tell you. So again, we need to be able to hear those voices, and that's the biggest challenge, is to be able to have the resources to host events, to hear their voices, and making sure that the ideas of our nations are what we're communicating to you.
Great. Thank you, Will, and congratulations on your new role. Thank you.
English.
Thank you. Next question is from David Yurdiga, please.
Well, thank you for being here today. It's an honor for us to hear from the youth. Obviously, the youth are our future, and what we do now will determine the future of the next generation. So, just going through your handout under Youth Leadership and Wisdom, it states creating meaningful opportunity for youth to take action on issues of importance to them. Can you expand on the types of opportunities this document is referring to?
Again, that's just going to be the ability to travel around for our grassroots youth to at least to open up the doors for them to come to these types of events or conferences or training sessions in order for them to expand their horizons, to leave the community, and to empower themselves to, again, expand that leadership mind and to be able to understand where they would fit into this whole advocacy areas. And that's where that sort of, I guess, comes from. So we need more support in order to make sure that these types of things are accessible for them.
Yeah. Does it refer also to the economic climate? Also, everything takes money. So the future for the youth, do they have jobs? What's their future? So how important is education and job creation to the youth?
Very important. It's the way I see it is that I have to walk two roads. I have to keep my identity, but I also need to make sure that I'm educated in the current system that we're in order to benefit, to get a job, to hold a job, and to make money to support my family. And that's very important for our youth. You see, a lot of suicides can be linked to low economic opportunity. They don't feel like there's a lot for them out there because, sitting in welfare is not a great option for them, and it gets depressing, things like that. So in terms of creating jobs, it's also, we're going to have to invest into infrastructure because a lot of the places in the north, it's tough to even start thinking about developing jobs in places like Attawapiskat that are isolated and alone. So that's just what I think is very important, but it's tough.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned about being trapped between two worlds. We're in Iqaluit, a young gentleman said he's trapped between two worlds. He can't go back, and he cannot move forward. So is this a common sentiment among Indigenous youth?
It's tough to find balance. A lot of youth will either go too much into one world, and they might get lost in things. And that's, I think, where things like addiction and stuff come into play. Because in our side of things, alcohol and drugs and all that stuff are not, you're not supposed to be abusing them in those ways. And that's where I find my strength in terms of staying sober and things like that, and why I'm able to function better on the other side of the coin in terms of holding a job and being in places like these and doing my work. But yeah, I think it's a very common sentiment amongst the youth.
Well, thank you for that. And I heard a lot from a lot of witnesses regarding cultural renewal. So how is this incorporated into the calls for action?
Well, the calls to action, I just got to find the right number just so I make sure I say that properly. So number 6, culturally appropriate land-based teachings and educational programs are available for youth and young people. So that's already incorporated. I think there's another one with elders. Yep, so number 5, support be provided to First Nation communities so that elders and culture advisors can provide cultural teachings that will enable young people to know where they came from and who they are. So that's already incorporated within these calls to actions in terms of, I hate to say reclaiming or refinding your identity because it's who we are. I think it's just more focused on unlocking who we truly are as people.
A lot of times we heard a lot of people like to see, especially the youth, more cultural things incorporated into the education system, like having elders come in. So do you feel that having elders being part of the educational system very important to get this cultural renewal?
Yes, I believe every board, like in our public school board, we have a Aboriginal advisor, and I believe a lot of school boards do have something like that. But I think even on something as a provincial level needs to start looking at having advisory circles from elders to come together and make sure, or even just on school board levels, to make sure that the proper programming and that the proper services are being provided for our youth in a culturally safe manner.
How much time I have left?
You've got 2 minutes.
Excellent. Another thing is, what challenges do you face in creating new youth to take leadership roles, and what role does mentors play in developing our youth for the future?
There's definitely a lot more youth stepping up to the plate in terms of leadership than when I was a young person. So I think some of the challenges that are out there is, again, as I said, it's tough for a lot of our youth who are very aware because of social media. They're aware of what's going on in our world and within Canada. So it's tough for them to feel like they can make a difference, a lot of them. When I've talked to some youth, I've asked for some youth to, if they might take my position in 3 years, because that's how long my term is. And they feel like, well, even if I do, what can I accomplish? I feel like, we're still hitting our heads up against the wall. There's such already a cynical outlook as to relationship between our two people, our two ways of being, and that they just feel like they are not going to make a difference. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is to re-encourage them and to realize that, the government is going to be open to hearing us and to be open to working with us. But again, that's going to have to be demonstrated.
Well, thank you. That's there's so many things that that's the Aboriginal youth and the Indigenous youth face on an ongoing basis. So what measures can the government take to address youth suicide specifically?
You're going to have to meet nation-to-nation level, PTOs, unceded territories. You're going to have to meet them and see what their needs are and where you can provide the support. Again, we're already doing the work on the ground with the resources that we have. We're already taking those roles and steps into healing. So where we're going to need to come in is to decide as to where our resources need to be allocated, what needs more support and things like that. But again, that's just going to have to be with you guys coming to the nations and asking them and seeing their unique issues and their unique assessments.
Thank you.
Thanks. The next question is from Charlie Angus, please.
Well, thank you. I want to thank you for that excellent presentation. To tell you that I take great hope in my work, because I see the power of young people in the communities who are speaking up and taking leadership, and I'm very, very confident that the future will be better because of leadership like yours. But what we need to do is address the deep-seated systemic denials of rights that are still in place. Last night, myself and my colleague from Thunder Bay saw Gord Downey's incredible performance of the Charlie Wenjack story, and it was very moving. But I kept thinking through that Canadians still don't get it, that they think the stories of Charlie Wenjack are 50 years old, when the stories of Charlie Wenjack are happening to this generation of young people who have to leave home at 13 and 14 to go to school. I thought of Shannon Kustashian. She was 13 when she had to leave Attawapiskat. That's way too young to go to school. To go to school in a provincial system, her parents, she lived with my family, and she was an incredible warrior for education, but we were told her parents had to sign her guardianship over to us to go to school. Like, that is such an attack on the power of the family. But it was just considered perfectly normal, by the federal Indian Affairs Department, by the White School Board. It's like, hey, that's how things are done in 2016. I want to ask you, as a youth, about confronting this system that's still very much in place. For all the positive talk, the system of Duncan Campbell Scott and the denial of rights to young people is still very much in place. What is it going to take for us to start to dismantle this, so that education and health and the decision-making of your generation is decided to your benefit?
That's just going to have to be our commitment to the long battle. That's, I think, at the end of the day, most First Nations people want to see an Indian Act taken away. But there's already so much legislation, like within the education legislation, that it just makes it very tough, because there's a lot of things that are entrenched from the Indian Act in the different legislations. So it's going to have to be that long battle in working with people who have experienced these legislations, people who have experienced things like those attacks against the family, to figure out what parts of legislations need to be taken away, need to be chiseled away, in order to start creating that empowerment within our families and within our communities. So that's where I think we have to settle in for the long battle and understand that we're not going to see the end of it in our lifetime, but we can start a process in which that maybe 2 or 3 generations from now, things like that won't be commonplace.
Thank you. Well, I hope we'll see it in our lifetime. I think the system has to be dismantled. I have thousands and thousands of pages of access to information documents to figure out how this system could be as dysfunctional as it is. I've got it all back to Duncan Campbell Scott's notes on ripping off the Cree people after signing Treaty 9. And in all the years from the 1920s and Duncan Campbell Scott to the Pierre Trudeau government, all the documents right up to today. I've never ever once seen a bureaucrat say, I'm really concerned about the children. Never once. Now, they're good people. They do good work. They're soccer moms and soccer dads. But it seems that the system from the beginning was focused on downloading the costs so the feds didn't have to pay, and that's what they did in the residential schools, and that's what they're still doing in education, limiting liability of government, and negating treaty obligations. So that the people who are running the education and health systems, they're not educators. They don't have backgrounds in schooling. So we have a non-system federally, unlike the provincial systems, where in the provincial systems, everything is done for the benefit of the children. So can we even reform this system? You speak so well about the need to take control of education. How can we reform a non-system as opposed to taking the power away from the bureaucrats who are trying to limit their own responsibilities and liabilities? And how do we transform it so that the communities and the families and the parents are in charge of making the decisions about what is best for the well-being of young people?
We already see that within the NAN territories beginning to set up their own education school board and their own ideas of what education should look like within their areas. And I think almost there has to be a support system for all PTOs, or even just right down to sovereign nations, to take that approach. We have the word is anakanagewin in our language. It's like law. So we have to be able to support these communities come up with their own education anakanagewin, making sure that that's the part that's being respected, so that we have a framework to be able to point to and say, this is exactly what we want and what we need. And I think the government can help that by making sure that we have the resources to hire the experts and the technicians, and to make sure our elders are included to establish such a framework.
I want to go back to the issue then on education in terms of accountability and nation to nation. I don't know what nation to nation means all that much, except it must mean being truthful. But in terms of education, in terms of healthcare, the documents are always impossible to find. How much is actually being spent on the health continuum? 350,000. What's the rest? Where's it going? I don't know. We're always plunged down rabbit holes with the departments. If we're going to have a nation-to-nation relationship, and I encourage you as a youth leader at the AFN to call for this, that we need to have the books of Health Canada open so we know how the decisions are being made and why they're being made. And I would like to ask you, in terms of your experience with the other youth out there, about the youth stepping up. Because I see the articulate and confident nature that you have, and I see it in the NAN Youth Council, and I see it in the other youth leaders, of actually saying, you don't want to come here anymore just to be heard and then we make our report, but you want to be part of the decision making because it's about your life. Do you see a way that we could do that?
A way in which that we're included in the decision making?
Youth are being heard and actually can start to help develop the policy of what is good for the youth.
I think the best way to do that is to maybe even at the end of this, because I'm new to all of this again, and it'd be nice to see how long it would take for our council or even the AFN organization to hear back and to see, once the report is written, how quickly can we get together again and to start seeing which actions can we implement immediately, and then we continue to meet to see what happens in the long term. Again, it's just going to have to be coming together, and with all parties involved. That's going to be our youth council, it's going to be all our leaders, and it's going to be our elders.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We have time for just one more question, and that question is coming from Don Resnack, please.
Hi, Will. I believe I've met you before in Treaty 3 territory. I've been around there a little bit. Our ancestors both signed the treaty with Canada, since I am from Lac du Lac First Nation. I've worked in the area quite a bit and seen the problems regarding the youth, but not only the youth, also problems with elders and people that are troubled from middle age, right from young children to the elderly. People tend to, from our First Nations around the area, tend to glob into either Kenora, Dryden as service centers, because a lot of what a lot of what they need in terms of health and other services are provided in those centers. In terms of your upbringing, were you brought up on a reserve in the Treaty 3 territory near Kenora, or were you brought up in Kenora?
I was brought up on Rap Portage First Nation, which is just outside of Kenora, but yes, I grew up on a First Nation.
Okay, and did you go to Beaver Brae High School?
Yes.
Okay, so one of the things we've been talking about, and that's how complex this issue is, because you grew up on a First Nation, you went to a high school that was in the adjoining community, and the provincial governments and the school boards have authority over those schools. I know my friend from the NDP often talks about underfunding of First Nation schools, and I agree with him on, for the most part, a lot of First Nation education, especially on reserve, has been chronically underfunded for far too long. But the education that we're providing to our youth, our First Nation youth, and all of our youth, I think in this country, in this day and age, is doing a great disservice in not learning the whole history of Canada. And was that your experience, especially at Beaver Brae, where there's a high percentage of First Nation students? Were you learning about the history of the treaty? I went out to where they were signing the treaty when I worked for Grand Council Treaty 3 on the lake, and we did a feast ceremony. Are the students learning about that?
I think they're learning a bit of the basics as to what those treaties mean. Again, it's a lot that has to do with the respect to our culture. As in Treaty 3 especially, we're very sacred and very spiritual up there, and that it's tough to give full teachings on the treaty, because to us the treaty is of a spiritual nature, and you only talk about what you know. But what I think needs to happen, and I always make this comment, is that it's going to have to be the Canadian public school system to teach the Canadian public youth what that means to be in a treaty relationship, because each and every one of us in this room are treaty people. We're all treaty people because we all live on a treaty area or treaty land, unless you live in an unceded territory. But that's still the case, that these young people need to learn about the treaties, and they never learned about that. In fact, actually, I've faced a lot of racism in Beaver Brae and in middle school. I was bullied a lot just to be an Aboriginal person, and in a very brutal, violent ways. In fact, even a teacher in grade 8 told me I wouldn't make it to university because I was Aboriginal. A teacher in my grade 10 class told me I didn't belong in that academic class because I was Aboriginal. It's different now, but we have to capitalize on what seems to be this more accepting nature into our schools, to start encouraging that incorporation into all education aspects. Even something as simple as a geography course can start mapping out, here's Treaty 3, here's where we live, here's part of that land, maybe here's where Treaty 3 was signed and how important that is. Just in even those classes that might seem like it's not important for treaty dialogue, but it can be if it's incorporated properly.
So in a community like Kenora, where you grew up, in the high school you went up, or you went to the high school you went to, the community you grew up in, would it be more advantageous to have a separate school for First Nation students coming from the nearby First Nations, or turning Beaver Brae into an accepting school that really taught the history and taught the culture to all students in the district?
That's an interesting thing. It's one I talk about with my mother a lot, who works for the public school system. And I think that there is a benefit to both. I think if there was a school separate from the public school system for the younger ages, to instill with them a pride in their identity and who they are, making sure that they're ready, and to start integrating them into the public schools like Beaver Brae or higher middle school areas, like to take grades 7 and 8, I think that would almost be really beneficial, because you'd have kids going into these accepting areas, these already accepting schools, with a strong identity of who they are and their ability to absorb, again, the realities of the country that they're in, to be able to take in the necessary skills that they need to I guess, I hate to say the word function society, but essentially to benefit in the world that we live in today. So I think that would almost be a good compromisable area. Again, that's just a thought that just came in my head. But both of them have their strengths and their weaknesses, and it's just going to have to be, it's going to take a few years and probably a good case study. Kenora would be a really good case study to really look at to see what would be more beneficial and what would be more maybe disadvantageous.
One more minute. I've often said at this committee when witnesses are here, I see this as it's a long-term solution. Of course, we have to deal with the crises right away, and the government's doing that, sending in crisis teams that are hopefully appropriate. We're learning about that as we go along. The government's responding to these issues. There's a long-term problem here, and what you said earlier, that there shouldn't be a committee in 150 years studying the same thing, and I don't want to see that either. I don't want to see a committee in 10 years, 5 years, studying suicide again, suicide amongst Indigenous people. But we have to separate the immediate and the crisis from the long term. Through some of the long term, I believe that we can start communities and First Nation people, Indigenous people down the right path. Have you seen any positive examples in terms of the communities in the Treaty 3 area where communities are taking a positive approach to their economy, their culture, their society?
I think there are quite a few communities that are really taking, I think, Rat Portage, within its location with the marina and all that stuff, they already have a little bit of a base in terms of economic development. They just need to be able to have the support to continue building on that. And there are quite a few communities who have their own business. There had quite, in the past, there was fisheries, there was a fur making factory, thinking like Whitefish or something like that. So these communities already have experience in building economies. They just need to be able to adapt to those stronger things. But in terms of that healing, and again, I agree that there does need to be an immediate response. There's always this comparison that with mental health, you don't see the wound, it's inside. But I think it can still be treated the same way, because if someone faces significant trauma, you still got to stop the bleeding before you can start focusing on the long-term healing. So that's what we really need to do, and think of it in that sort of way. In terms of what some communities are doing, we see a lot of elders taking more of an active role, like Gilbert Smith from Fort Francis is a prime example of an elder who's gone above and beyond the call of duty to continue to provide healing to a lot of people in their communities, and very specific programs that are really effective. I think that there needs to be more work within their service organizations, such as KCA and other things like that, and the KCAs and the other territories, the other provinces, things like that, to really start opening their dialogue and see what strengths that they have or what they're doing right. Because I think a lot of communities are doing a lot of things right. There's just not a lot of communication as to what we're doing. So that needs to change.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Landon, for your remarkable testimony today. You've been a tremendous help to the committee. Thank you also, Elder Annie St. George, for being with us as well. Very grateful indeed. We're going to take a very, very short suspend and come back for committee business.
you.